What happens when one of country music's most beloved stars sits across from daytime television's most controversial panel, and everything unravels? That's exactly what viewers witnessed when Blake Shelton stepped onto The View. What should have been a simple, lighthearted promotional appearance turned into one of the most explosive on-air confrontations in daytime history. The morning at ABC's New York studio began like any other. Shelton, casual in denim and a button-down, walked out to cheers from the audience, fresh off a hit tour and his latest album release. The plan was simple: talk music, share road stories, charm the fans. But from the moment he took his seat, the air felt different. Joy Behar leaned in with an intensity that cut through the stage lights. Whoopi Goldberg sat with her trademark steel gaze. Even the other panelists seemed braced for impact. The scripted pleasantries, smiles, laughs, small talk rang hollow. Something sharper lurked beneath the surface. Then Behar struck. "So, Blake," she began, her tone instantly shifting, "you've been vocal about politics before. With everything happening in this country right now, what are your thoughts on the big issues dividing us?" The room stiffened. Shelton, visibly caught off guard, forced a polite smile. "Well, Joy, I've always believed music should bring people together, not push them apart. I'd rather focus on giving folks something positive to connect with." It was a careful answer, meant to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Behar didn't let go. "That's nice," she pressed, leaning closer. "But don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to speak up about injustice? You've got millions of fans listening. Staying quiet is a choice too, isn't it?" Shelton's jaw tightened. He clasped his hands, his charm starting to fade. "Everyone has the right to their own views. I'm not going to act like an expert on every issue just because I sing songs. I respect my fans enough to let them think for themselves." That's when Whoopi cut in, her voice sharp. "But Blake, staying neutral while people suffer, that is taking a side. Your silence says more than you realize." The audience gasped. Shelton sat up straighter, his expression hardening. "You're making assumptions about me based on what I haven't said, instead of what I have. That doesn't seem fair." Suddenly, the floodgates opened. Other panelists piled on, citing old tweets, resurfacing out-of-context quotes, pushing him deeper into a corner. The casual country star who walked in for a friendly chat now found himself under siege. Off to the side, his publicist shifted anxiously, powerless to intervene. The audience, once buzzing with excitement, fell into uneasy murmurs. What they were watching was no longer an interview. It was an ambush, and Blake Shelton knew it. "Look," Shelton said, his voice edged with warning, the kind of grit born out of Oklahoma backroads. "I came here to talk about music, to maybe share a laugh with your viewers. I didn't sign up to be lectured about my beliefs, or have my character torn apart based on assumptions." Joy Behar leaned forward, her tone rising. "Character, Blake? That's exactly what we're talking about. When you stay silent while people are under attack, when you refuse to use your platform to speak up, that is your character." The studio froze. The laughter and clapping from earlier had vanished, replaced with a heavy silence that pressed against the walls. Shelton's face flushed crimson as his hands gripped the arms of his chair until his knuckles turned white. This was no longer a debate. It was personal. "Then it happened," Shelton snapped. His Oklahoma drawl thickened as the words cut through the set. "Now hold on just a damn minute," he barked, his voice low but thunderous. "You don't know the first thing about me, lady. You sit here in your bubble, judging people you've never met, acting like you're the moral police. That's rich, coming from someone who makes a living tearing folks down on national TV." The audience gasped. Joy's face reddened, her composure cracking. "Excuse me?" she shot back. "I'm holding you accountable, Blake. That's what journalists do. We ask the questions your fans won't." Her tone dripped with condescension, but Shelton wasn't flinching anymore. The polished PR mask was gone. What sat there now was a man cornered and unafraid to bite back. "Journalist?" he sneered. "That's what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a setup. You brought me here under false pretenses and now you're..." Trying to strong-arm me into saying what you want so you can clip it for headlines. That's not accountability. It's ambush. A visible ripple of discomfort spread across the table. Whoopi Goldberg, silent until now, finally interjected, her tone firm, authoritative. Nobody's ambushing you, Blake. This is a conversation about responsibility. If it makes you uncomfortable, maybe you need to ask yourself why. Shelton let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Responsibility? How about the responsibility to treat your guests with respect? To actually have an honest discussion instead of staging a political gotcha moment? You lecture me about platforms while using yours to gang up on anyone who doesn't parrot your views. The air in the room thickened. The audience sat frozen, some shifting uneasily in their seats as cameras caught every second of the clash. Another panelist leaned in, her voice sharp. Blake, we're just asking how someone with your influence can claim to care about people while staying silent on issues that matter. Don't you see how that looks hypocritical? Shelton's eyes narrowed, his voice rising with conviction. Hypocritical? You want to talk hypocrisy? You sit here pretending to care about people, but the second someone doesn't march to your political drumbeat, you tear them apart. You say you speak for marginalized communities, but what about the millions in small towns in rural America whose voices you write off as backwards or irrelevant? What about their struggles, their perspectives, or do they not count because they don't fit your narrative? The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others booing. The stage had shifted. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a televised brawl, and Blake Shelton wasn't backing down. The question lingered in the air, heavy as a dare. The silence that followed said everything. None of the panelists were willing to acknowledge a perspective outside their own. Joy Behar was the first to recover, her voice dripping with mockery. Oh, so now we're playing the victim card? Poor Blake Shelton, the multi-millionaire country star oppressed by a few mean liberal women asking tough questions. The jab landed like a slap. The audience stirred uncomfortably. It was the wrong move against a man already pushed to the edge. Shelton's expression hardened, his voice dropping into a low, cutting register that carried more weight than any shout. You know what, Joy? You just showed everybody exactly who you are. This isn't about politics or justice or whatever principles you claim to stand for. This is about you, sitting up here, looking down on people you think are beneath you. Whoopi Goldberg tried to interject, her tone steady but strained. Blake, that's unfair. We're not attacking you personally. We're challenging your positions on issues that matter. But the words rang hollow after the venom Behar had unleashed. Shelton shook his head slowly, disbelief etched across his face. Unfair? From the second I sat down, you've been attacking me personally, my character, my values, my integrity, all based on your assumptions and prejudices, and now you're going to call this journalism? The tension was unbearable. In the control room, producers were no doubt panicking as the show veered into chaos. Yet the cameras kept rolling, capturing every searing second. Another panelist jumped in, voice stern, launching into a lecture about privilege and the responsibility to be an ally. The moment only poured gasoline on the fire. Shelton's reply was sharp and immediate. Don't you dare lecture me about privilege while you sit here in a Manhattan studio, completely cut off from the real world. You want to talk responsibility? How about owning up to the divisive rhetoric you push every single day? How about taking responsibility for the polarization you profit from while claiming to fight against it? The audience erupted in murmurs, split between applause and disapproval. The words hit hard. Behar's face tightened, the last thread of composure snapping. You know what your problem is, Blake? She spat, her voice rising above the noise. You can't handle being challenged. The stage was set. The clash had gone from tense to incendiary, and there was no pulling it back. You're so used to having your ego stroked by fans, Joy sneered, that you can't handle anyone questioning your cozy little worldview. It wasn't a question. It was a strike meant to wound. Shelton leaned forward, eyes locked on hers with an icy intensity. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. My problem? My problem is that I trusted you people to have an honest conversation. Instead, I walked into an ambush. I gave you the benefit of the doubt when I should have known better. Civility was gone. The clash had reached the point of no return. Emboldened by the nods of her co-hosts, Behar went further, her words razor-sharp. You know what, Blake? Maybe the problem isn't our questions. Maybe the problem is you. Country music is changing. America is changing. And maybe there's no room anymore for people with your outdated views. The audience gasped. Even a few panelists shifted uncomfortably. But Behar pressed on, relentless. Maybe it's time you step aside. Let artists with progressive values take the stage. Maybe your fans deserve better than someone stuck in the past. The studio fell deathly quiet. Shelton sat motionless, his face carved in stone, fury radiating from him like heat. The insult wasn't just pointed, it was personal. Even the crew behind the cameras looked rattled. When Shelton finally spoke, his voice was a blade. Quiet, controlled, every syllable laced with conviction. You know what, Joy? You just proved everything I suspected about you. And this show. You don't care about real conversation. You don't care about hearing different perspectives. You just want to tear down anyone who doesn't think exactly like you. He turned his gaze on the entire panel, his contempt unmasked. You talk about progress, but what you really mean is silencing people. You've turned what should be a platform for dialogue into a weapon, one you aim at anyone who dares to be different. Sensing the fire had grown too hot, Whoopi tried to step in, her tone measured. Blake, emotions are running high. Maybe we can take a step back. But Shelton cut her off, slicing the air with his hand. No, Whoopi. We're way past that. Your colleague just told me on national television there's no place for people like me in America anymore. She told millions of viewers that my fans deserve better than me. Don't try to dress this up as emotions running high. This is about showing your true colors. The tension was suffocating. The audience sat frozen, many visibly squirming, unsure if they were watching a talk show or a public execution. This wasn't debate. It was a character assassination, broadcast live. But Joy, instead of retreating, doubled down, her tone dripping with smug certainty. Well, maybe if the shoe fits, Blake. Maybe if you're feeling attacked, it's because deep down you know what I'm saying has truth. Maybe it's time you ask yourself why you're so defensive. That was it. The last nerve snapped. Shelton shot to his feet, his chair scraping across the floor with a violent screech that cracked through the studio like a gunshot. That's it. Shelton's voice cracked through the silence, no longer restrained, but carrying the full weight of his anger. I'm done with this circus. I came here in good faith, to talk about my music, to connect with fans. Instead, I walked into a staged ambush run by bullies who think moral superiority gives them the right to treat people like dirt. He began unclipping his microphone, each motion slow, deliberate, precise, fury contained within control. You want to know what's really outdated? It's this smug belief that you can humiliate anyone who thinks differently and then pat yourself on the back for being virtuous. It's this lie that disagreement equals evil. That's not progress. That's arrogance dressed up as morality. The panel froze. Even the audience held its breath. You talk about values, responsibility, respect, he continued, his voice rising with conviction. But where are your values when it comes to basic decency? Where's your responsibility to have a real conversation instead of orchestrating a hit job? With one sharp motion, he tossed the mic onto the table. The thud reverberated like a gavel, final and unyielding. You had a chance to build bridges tonight, Shelton said, his voice low, burning with disappointment. A chance to prove that dialogue still matters. Instead, you chose division. You chose to use this platform to shame, to bully, to silence. Joy Behar shifted in her seat, her bravado faltering. Blake, if you can't handle, don't! Shelton snapped, his words like steel. You don't get to spin this. This isn't about me not handling criticism. This is about you showing millions of viewers exactly who you are under all that righteous talk. And it's ugly. He turned then, not to the hosts, but to the camera, speaking past them, directly to the viewers at home. Folks, what you just saw is everything wrong with our national conversation. I wasn't brought here to talk. I was brought here to be destroyed, for the crime of thinking differently. And if they'll do it to me, they'll do it to anyone. The audience stirred, the weight of the moment sinking in. The panel, so sharp only minutes ago, looked suddenly small, diminished, petty. This country faces real problems, Shelton said, his voice heavy now with sorrow more than rage. And instead of tackling them, they'd rather score points by tearing down anyone who doesn't fall in line. That's not courage. That's cowardice. He stepped away from the table, the silence trailing him like a shadow. Before leaving, he turned one last time, his words slow and deliberate, aimed like arrows. You know what's never going out of style? Respect, honest conversation, the willingness to listen instead of destroy. You can't shame those values out of existence, because they're bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than this moment. And with that, Blake Shelton walked off the view. The studio sat in stunned silence, hosts shaken, audience reeling, cameras catching a moment that would echo far beyond the walls of that set. He had come as a guest promoting his music. He left as a man who delivered a stinging rebuke of everything toxic about modern media. The silence he left behind said more than words ever could.